So, maybe you're thinking this is cool, this is interesting, this expands what I can do harmonically, but now how do I practice it? How do I put it into use? And what I would encourage you to do is think about those things that we talked about before, those same principles, those same techniques in terms of how do you make, you know, an interesting chordal solo. In terms of soloing, how do you make something interesting using chords? Again, not doing any, we haven't, I know we haven't gotten to the pinky stuff. We will get to the pinky stuff. But a foundation for what you can do without changing the voicing is so crucial. Because if you have a repertoire of stuff you could do without changing the left hand of it all, then when you have some ideas about how to change left hand, you're going to have a foundation of cool musical stuff that then can contribute to this one extra little thing of, you know, changing the voicing a little bit. If you don't have that foundation of stuff to do with chords without altering the voicing, there's a tendency to kind of rely on the pinky stuff, rely on the left hand, and it might actually mask the notion that the underlying ideas aren't as strong as they could be. A lot of times I hear people playing, single line players, single line mandolin solo, trumpet solo, violin solo, whatever. If they're playing a single line solo and it's a very, very, very notey solo, and they're playing these beautiful lines that weave in and out of the changes, sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes, though, all those extraordinary notes are kind of hiding the fact that there's not a whole lot of rhythmic interest there. Now, if someone has kind of worked with fewer notes and creating ideas that are rhythmically compelling with fewer notes, when you do add those extra notes, there's no reason to kind of get rid of all the rhythmic stuff that you've been working on. It gives you an opportunity to add that to the cool notes. And therefore, the whole thing becomes cooler, which is what we want. So, I mean, it's the big difference between someone like Charlie Parker and people who have learned all of those licks. Charlie Parker had such a profound rhythmic sense that he can play these extraordinary notes, these extraordinary lines of notes, and there's this extraordinary rhythmic foundation. There are people who understand completely the harmonic weaving of what Charlie Parker did, but they don't have that rhythmic thing that really is what propels this music. And so, in terms of what we can do here, just starting, forget the 2/5 thing for a minute. We'll jump into that in just a second. But just in the name of building, I want to look at the voicing options 1. So we have D7, G7, C7, F, A7. I just want to talk you through some things you could do, and I just want to use that first half because the principles are the same for the second half. Just as a reminder, we have rhythmic stuff we can do on the chord, and you can, if you're wanting to practice something, someday you pick up the instrument, you want to practice something, you don't know what to practice, this is always a great thing to practice. Is just kind of grab a chord, and notice I'm staying on that D7 because what I'm practicing is not moving from chord to chord. I'm practicing what can I do rhythmically with this one chord if I were to be doing a chord solo. So that's one part of it. The other part that we talked about before was the kind of the moving back and forth by half step. That's huge. If you listen to again, I keep referencing him, but it's because he gave us so much good stuff to listen to. If you listen to the way that Bucky Pizzarelli solos, there's a lot going on. Excuse me, but one of the things that is going on is this. Taking the chord and being rhythmic with it. That's so huge. If you're not rhythmic with this stuff, it's not going to really... it's not going to be as effective as it could be. Be rhythmic and just, again, moving within a half step. So between the rhythmic idea on one chord and the idea of moving half steps, and again, too much of any one good thing will become tedious and maybe irritating, but certainly not as effective as it could be. Rhythmic ideas on one chord, moving back and forth by half step. I'm going to play through the first half of Sweet Georgia Brown with those two things in mind, and let's see how this works. So like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, that was just the first half, and all I did nothing more. I did nothing with different voicings. It was just rhythmic ideas on the chord and moving back and forth from chord to chord. So that's the first thing you want to practice before looking at these options too, which we'll do now, just to give you a sense of how that could work too. The nice thing about it is the same stuff you're thinking about with those dominant chords in the let's call it just the kind of core version of the tune. All those same considerations just bounce over. The only difference is you have some more chords to think about. So let me just play this A minor D7, this D7, these 4 bars of D7. I'm just going to loop that. I'm just going to do a bunch of D7. And this time what I'm going to do is throw this A minor into the mix and throw that A minor into the mix along with our D7. And again, I'm going to be thinking about rhythmic ideas on the chord and every now and then approaching or messing around a half step above or below. So 1, again, nothing different with the... I'm not embellishing the voicings at all. I'm just thinking I'm going to do this little dance between A minor and D7 when I want to. You don't have to do it constantly. You can throw it in there in just one moment if you wanted to. So before, when I was in the D7 land, before going to G7, the only time I use that A minor D7 idea is I approach that A minor by a half step. I approached that from a half step below, and then I got back to D7 from a half step above. D7, approach from a half step below, and then half step above. And, if you want to be systematic about it, you certainly could. You could say, okay, I'm going to practice these things, and I'm going to go from A minor to D7, D7, A minor, D7, A minor. And every time I think about that A minor, I'm going to approach it from a half step below. If you want to just get that idea moving, I mean, part of this is saying, okay, let me see how this works. Let me try this. Let me do it enough so my fingers understand how that works. That's really the whole idea with this stuff. There's nothing that changes through. I'm just looking at the sheet to make sure I'm not misspeaking. There's nothing that changes. All the 5 chords to 2 5s, all those considerations. You can use those 2 chords, those minor 7 chords. Use them when you want. Don't use them when you don't want. Experiment with how much is too much. Have some fun with that. See what happens. Put on a record of Sweet Georgia Brown and say, okay, let me keep going back and forth between A minor and D7. When does that sound weird? When does that sound good? You got to try this stuff in a practical, kind of real musical way. We're talking about it in a bubble, as you have to when you're exploring an idea, but you got to eventually put it into use and see how it works. For those of you who have opportunities to play out, to practice with others, to jam, if you're in bands, I would encourage you to use those opportunities to try things. You'll never be able to use them if you don't try them. And it's going to be very scary the first time you try something because I always try stuff a little before I should. I always try stuff a little before I have a handle on it. But I want to see, okay, how does this thing actually work? So I would encourage you to just kind of jump in and see, no one's ever died from playing a wrong chord or something. That sounds awful. If that was the case, I would be dead long ago. So don't worry about that. And, in terms of the other thing to just think about in terms of that D minor A7 section, when we have those 2 D minor chords and an A7 chord, you can have some fun. You can do one, then you could do that A7, then you could do the other one. You can actually go just approach that first D minor, then approach that second D minor. There's really no rules here. It's just kind of like take what you have and mix and match. It's kind of like musical Legos in a certain way, where you just kind of pop some things together. Take what you know, take the elements that you have to work with, and just you gotta experiment with it. But I know this was a slightly theory-heavy session, but it's not theory so you can impress people at cocktail parties. It's theory so you could look at a song and have a sense of, okay, I understand the moves, and maybe I even understand them on my instrument. And then it will help you to facilitate, if you know that, oh, that's a 5 chord and I can use a 2-5 thing here. That's the important stuff. That's so you know your options. Your options suddenly expand. And so that's where I want to leave it today. And I expect there's probably some questions about it, which I'm very, very happy to answer. But this is a really, really important and really kind of exciting notion. And so, I might have mentioned this before. Open up a fake book. Look at other pieces of music, and just in terms of that cycle of fourths, and can you start to identify where those chords kind of are linked by way of the cycle of fourths, or maybe it's going 1-5-1, like in Sweet Georgia Brown, D minor, A7, D minor. The more of that, again, and the reason is the more of that you can see, the less it becomes a matter of, oh shoot, here's a song, I need to memorize all of these chords, and you just kind of drill it into your mind. If you can make some logical sense of it, for me, it just becomes so much more accessible.